Welcome back to Hudson Appliance for another episode of Wicked Good Food. I'm your host, Matt Williams, and today is all about chili. So it's kind of cold outside, and we tend to make a lot of chilies. Christmas wasn't all that long ago, and we did something different for Christmas dinner at my parents' house. So instead of my mom having to make a big meal, or myself having to make a big meal for everyone, we actually had soup. Everyone was in charge of bringing their own soup, and they had some bread bowls, and they had some other stuff that goes with soup. And we hung out and we had a blast, and it was very, very low-key. However, my wife is not a big soup fan, but she does love turkey chili. So one of the chilies we're gonna make today is we're gonna use some of this ground turkey right here, and we're gonna make some turkey chili. Also on Christmas, we have some family come that are vegetarians. So my mom asked me to make a vegetarian chili. So we're gonna make a really good, real hearty, almost meaty, as much as you can say for vegetarian, vegetarian chili. And we're gonna make another chili that's actually gonna be half beef and half pork. And this is a recipe I developed 5 or 6 years ago. It's got an awful lot of stuff going on, but I made it for a chili competition I was going to enter. And it came out pretty well. It actually won first place. So we're gonna start out by adding some bacon fat, which I just cooked some bacon. So I'm gonna add some bacon fat to our pot here. About 4 ounces or so of it. So one of the things about this chili that's going to have the beef and the pork is it's going to be a little bit smoky too. We're going to get some of the smokiness from this bacon fat. So I'm going to add ground beef to it. And I'm going to add our ground pork to it. So it's about a pound or so of each. And I want to turn our heat up a bit more on there. Shut that guy off. And then, move these over here. We're going to start with our turkey chili. So for our turkey chili, actually, you know what? Let me move this over. In the turkey chili, we're just going to put our ground turkey right in here. Get a good little sizzle out of there. So now we want to just let this brown, both of these meats, or all 3 of these meats, 2 different pans. We want to try to get a little bit of color on the meat, because that's going to give flavor, in particular in the turkey one, because the turkey meat itself doesn't have a whole heck of a lot of flavor because it's so very lean. And you'll notice I'm using 2 different sort of utensils here. This one is plastic coated because this is an enamel cast iron pot and I don't want to scratch it with the metal. But here, this one's stainless steel, so I can get on it a bit with the metal. All right, we'll turn that guy back up. Beautiful. Now, we're going to start building what is going to be our vegetarian chili, which was a big hit at the party. So what I have here is some extra firm tofu, all right? A lot of people are like, tofu, really? Do you have to put that in there? But tofu can be terrible, but it can also be fantastic. And it all depends on how you do it. It's beautiful because it's like a blank canvas. It doesn't really have much flavor. It has texture, but it'll pick up the texture. It'll pick up the flavor of whatever it's cooked in. So what I'm looking to do is I'm just slicing it into little planks here, pretty thin, not worrying that they're perfect. But then I'm going to take all these and cut them nice and thin. So I'm going to get thin little strips. And maybe you can see where I'm going with this. I'm looking for small pieces of tofu. They're going to kind of mirror some of the texture of like having meat in our chili. Now, if you had a meat grinder at home, this is a perfect opportunity to use that meat grinder. I'm going to go back and just take a look and give our stuff a stir here. Beautiful. Oh yeah, you can smell that bacon fat warming up. Oh, good stuff. All right, and I'm going to go back and just give this a quick chop. I'm not worried that it's perfect, but I do want the pieces to be relatively small. So making 3 chilies in half an hour is going to be quite a lot of knife work because most of all these vegetables are going to be cut by hand. There are some things we're going to use canned, and we'll get into those in a minute. All right, that looks about good. If you see any real big pieces, I'm just going to go through and give it a quick once over. Now, before my pan is warm, I'm going to warm it up a little bit more. Before I add the tofu though, I want to add a little bit of oil. So I've got some olive oil here. So my goal is going to be to try to get a little bit of color on this tofu and to get the oil to come out faster. There we go. I'm going to throw this right in. Oh wow, this must be good olive oil. You can smell it right away. Great, great flavor. Great, great aroma, excuse me. All right, so our turkey's browned a bit. Our other meats have a ways to go yet. There's a lot more meat in this pot. So the next thing we're going to add to all three of these actually is onion. Onion is a big, big flavor component of chili. So like I said, we're trying to get some color on these things because color is flavor. But kind of a funny story, or what I thought was kind of an interesting story. A few years ago, we had a guy come to our school to talk to my students who actually was the world chili champion. He made a pot of chili that was worth $25,000 or something like that. Amazing. And he made us his chili. And it was not like any chili I've ever had before. And it was good, but I didn't think it was great. And he even said, this is not the kind of chili I would make to eat a big bowl of chili. But what he did was he actually took the meat, put it in a cold pan and added water to it and boiled the meat. Because in chili competitions, you were only judged on the flavor of the chilies, literally the chili pepper that you could taste. So he didn't want a meaty chili. The meat needed to be there for texture, but he wanted to get rid of the flavor. He actually got rid of all the fat, all the liquid that was in with the beef, and that was amazing to me. But we want to get a little color. So I'm going to dice these pretty fine for the turkey chili and for the vegetarian chili. For the other chili, I'm going to leave them a little bigger. So I'm going to make these real fine. Get rid of that too. And then this can go right into our turkey. Now this turkey has no fat in it, and I didn't add any fat to the pan. This is a chili when I'm trying to be good. This is a chili I'll make. I'll just brown the meat with no oil and not add any other fat to it. Now if I'm not worried about being good, then I'll start out my two fatty meats with some bacon fat. Okay, so let's give that a little bit here. And we're not quite ready here yet. I want to try to get a little bit more color on here. We'll turn the heat up a bit. And then for our other chili, I'm going to dice them bigger. So you'll see what the difference is when I go to dice them. Instead of making really small dices, small cuts, I'm going to make them quite a bit bigger. So whereas before I probably made 20 or 25 swipes through the onion, here I'm going to make about 10. And see, you can check out the difference in the size between one of these hunks versus one of these little guys here. Very, very big difference. But it's because we're going for two different things with our chilies. We'll do the same here. All right, I can hear this now. Oh, beautiful. So one of the things I love about this vegetable chili, and one thing that everyone commented on when I was making it, was how beautiful it is. And it really is beautiful. Just all the colors from all the different vegetables all cooked together. Beautiful. All right, so we've got our small onions here, we've got our big onions here. Next thing we're going to cut up are some red bell peppers. So we're going to use the red bell pepper in 2 of our chilies. We're going to use it in the turkey chili, and we're going to use it in our vegetarian chili. I used to work at this conference center, my very first job cooking, and it's one of these jobs where I didn't really have any choice but to take it. I was lazy, I was 16, I didn't have a job. My dad comes home and says, come with me. And we went, and I just kind of sat there in the chef's office for an hour or so while my dad and the chef caught up. And he's like, at the end of it, he's like, all right, you can start on Monday, and we'll see how it works out. But I ended up making appetizers and desserts at this conference center. And one of the things I had to do was simply bowl up chili. And they made this turkey chili that was so good. And I never asked what the recipe was. I was foolish. But eventually I figured out that the thing that made it stand out was red bell pepper. It was fantastic. So I always add red bell pepper to my turkey chili now. So you can see that the bottom of our pan here is turning brown just a little bit. And that's what we want. Exactly what we want. Just starting to brown a little bit. So I'm going to add our onions to our vegetable chili. I'm going to let our other meat brown a bit more here. So we'll take a quick break. I'm going to dice up some more of our peppers. You don't have to watch me dice peppers. We'll let all 3 of our chilies cook a little bit more, and then we'll keep on adding ingredients. All right, so we had a chance to let everything brown a bit. We've got a little bit of color on our tofu here. Our beef and pork have browned nicely, so we're ready to add our onions to that. So we'll add our onions, and we're going to let these cook in that mixture of bacon fat and more pork fat and the beef fat. And we want to let those get translucent. So I've got our peppers all diced up here. So we're going to add a decent sized handful of them to the vegetable chili, but we're going to add an awful lot to our turkey chili. And we're going to let these cook for a couple minutes. And then we're going to add some tomato paste. So tomato paste is one of those ingredients that if you were to taste it, if you taste it right out of the can, it's not very good. It's very acidic. It's pretty intense. But it's one of these things that is miraculous almost when you add it to a dish and you let it cook for a while, and some of that acidity will cook out of it. So that's what we're going to do here. This is going to give our chili, both of these 2 chilies, some real nice body, some real nice flavor, some real nice texture. So I've turned down our heat relatively low on both of them, and I want to mix the tomato paste around. So that we're making some contact with the bottom of the pan, because it's important that we let this cook. And this is going to cook for, I don't know, a good 10 minutes or so. You can't really overcook it, as long as it doesn't burn. And just keep checking the bottom. You might have to scrape the bottom now and again. Wipe my hands here real quick. And so I want to go back to cutting some vegetables. So to our turkey chili, to add some more color, we're going to add a yellow pepper. We could have added this before we added the tomato paste, but just for the sake of time, we'll add it after. So as always, I cut off the top and the bottom. We'll cut a little slit in the side, and we'll just kind of unroll our pepper. Being careful not to cut towards yourself. And then you get all the garbage right here. I'm going to go through and dice this up. Now with a vegetable chili, that's the cool thing about a vegetable chili, is add whatever you want to it. If there's a vegetable you don't like yellow peppers, you don't like bell peppers, and you decide that you want some yellow color, add some corn, some frozen corn. It's great. If it's the middle of corn season, add some corn right off the cob. You don't have to cook it or anything first. And I think this will be enough. And we can add this right to it as it cooks here. And we'll save these. This is all perfectly good pepper, but we don't need it right now. So one of the things we're going to add to this vegetable chili to give it kind of a meatiness is some mushrooms. You know, mushrooms are oftentimes compared to meat in some ways, of having a kind of a meaty flavor. So we're going to use baby portobello mushrooms. They're called cremini mushrooms, but what it is, and I'll show you in 1 second here, is it's a portobello that hasn't opened up yet. It's immature, so it's round. But if you can think of what a portobello mushroom is, oftentimes it can be as big as the top of my hand, but they open up like this. And underneath are all these gills that you need to cut off, but in these, the gills are still real young, so we don't need to cut them off. So I'm just going to slice these like so. But my goal is to have them be about the same size as my other vegetables in there. I went through and washed all these mushrooms. So, you know, it's kind of an old wives' tale that you should never wash mushrooms because they're a sponge. And yes, they will soak up a little bit of water, but they're almost all water anyways. So don't be afraid to rinse them under some cold water because they grow in compost usually. And usually there's some of that on the mushroom still. So it's important to rinse that off. And I would rather do it and just kind of rinse them under cold water than taking a little rag and going through every one of them. But you kind of get the idea here of what we're doing. So we're going to take another quick break. We want our tomato paste to cook in both of these. I'm going to cut some more mushrooms, and then we'll add our mushrooms to it, and we'll start adding all the other ingredients to all these chilies. All right, so I got some more mushrooms cut up here. I'm going to go ahead and add these right to this chili. And you'll see that, like I said, mushrooms are mostly water. You'll see that as this cooks kind of slowly, it's going to start to get a little bit of moisture. This is where we're going to start to get some of the moisture that's going to make this chili not be so thick, make it not be kind of like a paste. Now over here, our meat is nicely browned. Before we get to that, we want to add the rest of the ingredients for our turkey chili. So I'm going to add just a can of petite diced tomatoes right to it. Just like that. Stir this around a bit. Now a lot of the seasonings, some of the seasonings we're going to put into our beef and pork chili here are going to be the same that go in here, so we'll do those at the same time. But now, this is where this recipe gets a little weird. It's not your traditional chili recipe. So I'm going to add tomato juice to what we have here, and a pretty good amount of it, about 30 ounces or so, about like that. And then for a little bit of sweetness, but I want some sweetness that's not just purely sweet, and this is, we're going to add some molasses, which has got a lot of other flavor to it. And this is slow as molasses. It's almost gone, so it takes a minute here. All right, that's probably good. A couple tablespoons is what we're looking for. Then I'm going to add chili powder. So chili powder is what makes all these things chili. Chili is essentially a stew that's seasoned with chili peppers. So chili peppers can be incredibly hot, or they can be very mild. Chili powder, if you just go to the store and get chili powder, it's usually a very mild chili that's dried and ground up, and then it's mixed always with some cumin, and then sometimes there's some salt, and sometimes there's a garlic and onion and other things in there. But this one here is ground chili pepper, ground cumin, ground oregano, garlic powder, and salt. So we're going to add a couple tablespoons here, a little less, a couple tablespoons there. too. So I've got some limes. I'm going to add some cayenne pepper to this one. This is going to give us a little bit of heat. But I know Arthur's not a huge heat guy, so we're only going to add a little bit. But cayenne is a chili pepper. And so this is just pure cayenne pepper in there. We are going to add some cumin as well. Add some cumin to both of these. Now, if you were to smell cumin all by itself, that's instantly what I think of when I think of tacos. If you ever open a package of taco seasoning, it smells just like cumin. Now, we're also going to add to this one, because remember I said we're going to try to make it a little bit smoky? So this is a pureed chipotle. I'm going to put this right in there. So what a chipotle pepper is, it's a jalapeno pepper that they've smoked and dried. That's going to add a little bit more smokiness to it. Now you can see that this is very loose, but that's all right. There's a reason for that. So I think we've got everything in here, so I'm going to mix this one together a bit. And chili is essentially a stew. So a stew is little bits of meat that usually are seared, and then you add some sort of liquid to it, and then it's cooked. So this needs to stew. It needs to cook a bit now. But to this one, for a little bit of acidity, and to mix it up a little bit, we're going to add some lime juice to it. So I've got these nice juicy limes. And the recipe calls for 3. This recipe here actually is the only recipe that we're making today that's in my book. And it's a pretty good recipe. It's different, but I like a lot of the different flavors that are going on in it. So we'll add about that much for now, and we'll taste it later and adjust our seasonings. Now to all 3 of these, we need to add a little bit more pepper, fresh ground black pepper, which is a totally different plant than a chili pepper. And we're going to add some salt. All right. I'm going to turn our heat down a little bit on this guy because we've got a little bit of a simmer, which is exactly what we want. I'm going to turn our heat up a little bit on this guy because it's not quite at a simmer yet, but you can see how very loose that is. Now there's some places that serve chili that's just like that, but I like a little bit thicker chili. Now we're not done yet with our vegetables for this vegetable chili, so we're going to keep adding some veg. We're going to add some yellow squash. I'm going to cut the top and the bottom off. And then what I'm going to do is I only want the color out of it. I don't want the seeds, so I'm going to kind of trace right around it like this. If I get some seeds, I'm not overly concerned about it. But I don't want all these seeds. I don't want all this kind of mushy texture in there. So this is great. You can just dice it up and use it as a vegetable. You know, saute it like you'd saute any of your squashes. But then I'm going to cut this in little strips. All right. So I'm going to dice these up. So like I was saying, I entered in this chili competition one time, and I joined the American Chili Society. This is who is like the governing body of chili in the United States, and they're the ones that run the competitions. And so one of the things I found very interesting about competition chili is, which is, like I already said, is a whole different thing. I didn't love the competition chili that I had that actually won first place in the world. But it's a chili that is not allowed to have any beans in it, no rice, no fillers at all. It's just meat and the sauce that the meat is in. I guess I can add all these. So this one I was making for a competition, even though, come to find out, I was allowed to put beans in it. I'm not going to put any beans in. The turkey chili, my wife doesn't like beans, so the turkey chili doesn't get beans. But our veggie chili here, that's going to get beans. So I'm going to do the same thing with this zucchini. Okay, so we'll add this. Then to this, I'm going to add a can of whole plum tomatoes, just like that, the whole thing. And I'm also going to, excuse me, add some diced tomatoes. We can turn our heat up on this guy a bit. So now we've got all these different beautiful vegetables in here. As we cook, I'm going to break up some of these big tomatoes, but I like the contrast in size of the big tomatoes. So to this, I also need to add some cumin and some chili powder. So we've got most of the working parts of our chilies together here. We need to let them cook for a little bit. We'll let them cook, you'll come back, we'll taste them, and we'll see what else we have to do before Arthur comes up. Good. Hey, Arthur.
Hey, Matt. How are you?
Outstanding. Thanks again for having me at Hudson Appliance.
You're always welcome. What do we have today?
Chili.
Chili.
All different chilies.
All right.
So we made 3 different chilies. I kind of talked about the inspiration for each of them. This one here is a turkey chili.
Turkey chili.
Yep.
Okay.
My wife loves it. It's one that's real healthy. I don't know if you want to hear that or not, but almost no fat, with no added fat. It's just real lean turkey.
Which one do we have with the fat?
Not this one. So this one is not up your alley at all, but I'm curious to see what you think.
Okay.
This is actually a vegetable chili, all vegetables. Even those little bits that look like meat,
Yep.
that's actually tofu that we sauteed and cut up real small.
Okay.
And then the last chili we have is, there's one more step to this chili, and that's to add masa harina. So masa harina is essentially ground up corn, and this is pre-cooked, but this is going to thicken this chili, and it's going to give it a flavor almost like we broke up a whole bunch of tortilla chips in it.
Okay.
So this really should cook for a couple minutes to thicken a little bit, but we don't have a couple minutes, so we're going to eat it.
All right.
But this one's kind of loose. But 3 very different chilies. This one's made with a combination of pork and beef. It's a little bit smoky. There's molasses, there's lime, a lot of different things going on.
Okay.
Which one do you want to try first?
Well, let's start with the turkey.
Okay,
Your wife's favorite.
that's right. Lots of red bell pepper in this one.
That is very good.
Yeah, they came out perfect, exactly what it should. It reminds me of that conference center I used to work at. I said the first time I ever had it was at this conference center I worked at 25 years ago.
Let's try the vegetable.
Okay,
Now, this has tofu in it.
it does.
I like that. I really do.
So there's some mushrooms in there. There's a lot of things we put in there to try to give it kind of an earthy flavor, and the tofu's cut up real fine to give it some texture.
Right.
Yeah, I like it. It's quite good.
Now, neither one of them are really hot.
No, neither of these are spicy, and that's on purpose because we know you don't like it. My wife doesn't love the hot stuff.
Okay.
This one has a little bit, but we kept it a little mild.
Okay.
First thing you get is that smokiness, and there's a little bit of lime.
Yeah, I can taste the lime, and that's very good too. I mean, I'd like all 3 of them. I'll take either one of them. You know, everyone has a different little taste, but
Yeah, very
they
different.
are wicked,
Wicked good.